The morning was unnaturally still. No wind, no birds, just the sound of armor shifting, leather creaking, and breath held tight in thousands of throats. Then came the sound. A low rumble, deep and growing, the kind that makes the earth itself seem alive. It rolled across the plains of Platea, rattling shields and hearts alike. Dust began to rise on the horizon, turning the sky the color of ash. The Persians were coming. For the 10,000 Spartans standing at the front of the Greek line, this wasn't fear, it was hunger. A year ago, their king, Leonidas, and his 300 brothers had fallen at Thermopylae, surrounded, betrayed, and annihilated. Their bodies had been left to rot beneath a foreign sun. Their heads had been paraded through Persian ranks as trophies. Every man here had seen the smoke from that massacre. Every man had sworn vengeance. Now, vengeance had finally arrived. The Persians marched in endless waves, men from every corner of Xerxes' empire, archers from the east, cavalry from the north, and the dreaded Immortals, the elite guard who had slaughtered the 300. Tens of thousands of them, armor glittering, banners snapping, weapons gleaming like rivers of fire. Across the plain, the Greeks stood silent. A coalition army, Athens, Corinth, Megara, and a dozen others, but none commanded more fear or respect than the Spartans. They stood front and center, scarlet cloaks draped across shoulders, bronze helmets shaped like the faces of war gods. At their head was a man named Pausanias, Leonidas' nephew, young, disciplined, and burning with the same unbreakable pride. He looked down the long ridge of Spartan warriors. Their eyes met his, one by one. He didn't need to speak. They already knew. This wasn't just a battle, it was a reckoning. Suddenly, a Persian horn tore through the air, a single piercing note that made the mountains tremble. Then came the sound of countless feet pounding the ground in unison, a living thunderstorm of flesh and iron. Pausanias raised his spear, pointing it toward the horizon. The sun caught the bronze tip, flaring blindingly bright, and for a moment everything stopped. Every heartbeat, every breath, every sound, suspended between life and death. Then, with a roar that shook the heavens, the Spartans slammed their shields together. "For Leonidas!" someone shouted. It spread like wildfire through the ranks. "For Leonidas!" until the whole plain echoed with it. The Greeks began their advance, boots striking the earth like war drums. Before we reveal how this impossible battle unfolded, if you love the strange, dark, and mysterious stories from history, hit that subscribe button right now, because this battle, is one of the most brutal acts of vengeance ever recorded. As the lines closed in, the world seemed to shrink. The air thickened with dust and heat. The Persians loosed a storm of arrows, blackening the sky. The Greeks raised their shields, the air filled with the thunk of arrows slamming into bronze and wood. And then, impact. It was like two mountains colliding. Shields cracked, spears shattered, men screamed. The front lines heaved like a living beast. Spartans pushed forward in unison, their formation a single unstoppable wall of muscle and bronze. Every movement was practiced, perfect, the rhythm of centuries of discipline. For the Persians, it was chaos. They had never faced an enemy like this. Their strength was in numbers, in mobility, not in the claustrophobic crush of hand-to-hand slaughter. Every time a Spartan's spear thrust out, a man fell. Every time a Persian swung his blade, a shield absorbed the blow, and another spear found its mark. The smell of sweat, iron, and blood thickened until it was all anyone could breathe. The ground grew slick beneath their sandals. Somewhere behind the Persian lines, their commanders watched, confused. The Greeks were supposed to retreat. The Persians were supposed to crush them. But the Spartans weren't retreating, they were advancing. In the chaos, one of the Immortals, the elite warriors of Xerxes, broke through the melee, his curved blade flashing. He lunged for Pausanias. The Spartan leader twisted aside, driving his spear through the man's throat. The body fell hard into the dust. Pausanias wrenched his weapon free and bellowed, not in triumph, but in rage. This was for the men at Thermopylae. And with that cry, the Spartans surged forward again, the line bending and snapping back with lethal precision. The Persians had come to Platea expecting to crush the Greeks once and for all, but what they had walked into was something entirely different. They had walked into the wrath of a people who had already died once and returned to collect their due. And as the sun rose higher over the battlefield, one truth became clear. This day would not belong to Xerxes. It would belong to the 10,000 Spartans and the ghosts of the 300.
The night before the Battle of Plataea, the Greek camp was silent, but it wasn't peaceful. The Spartans sat around their fires, sharpening their blades, their faces lit in orange glow, eyes cold and focused. None spoke, none laughed. Across the plain, the Persian camp burned with noise, laughter, shouting, music, tens of thousands of men confident in victory. They had beaten Greece before. They had marched through cities, burned temples, enslaved thousands. Xerxes himself had watched Athens burn only months earlier. But he had made a mistake. He believed Greece was already broken, a fractured alliance of petty city-states that would never truly unite. He thought the death of Leonidas at Thermopylae had crushed Spartan morale. In truth, it had done the opposite. It had turned every Spartan into a weapon sharpened by grief. Picture this. You're a young Spartan hoplite. You were too young to fight at Thermopylae, but old enough to have seen the funeral pyres when the bodies came home, what was left of them. You remember the faces of the widows lined up in silence, their heads bowed, but their eyes burning. You remember the children, hundreds of them, vowing they would one day stand where their fathers fell. Now that day has come. You stand shoulder to shoulder with men who trained beside you since childhood. Your armor bears the marks of decades of discipline. Every scar, every muscle, every breath in your chest exists for one purpose: to avenge the 300. The insult that drives you isn't just the deaths, it's the humiliation. The Persians had desecrated Leonidas's body. They had mocked his sacrifice. They had sent messages across the Aegean boasting that Spartan honor was dead. To a Spartan, that wasn't just an insult, it was blasphemy. Across the Greek lines, General Pausanias watched the Persian campfires flicker in the dark. His scouts had returned with grim news. The Persians had built defensive walls around their camp. Their numbers dwarfed the Greeks 3-1. Cavalry patrols prowled the plains, cutting off water and supply lines. The Greeks were trapped in hostile territory. The alliance was fragile. The Athenians distrusted the Spartans. The smaller city-states bickered about strategy. Some wanted to withdraw to safer ground, but Pausanias knew what retreat would mean. The Persians would chase them down, destroy them piecemeal, and Greece would fall. So he made a choice. He would stand and fight right there on the plains of Platea. The decision wasn't just military, it was personal. Pausanias carried his uncle's memory like a brand on his soul. Leonidas had died holding a narrow pass to give Greece time. Pausanias would use that time to destroy the very army that killed him. But time was running out. Persian arrows harassed the Greeks by day. Cavalry raids attacked at night. Food and water dwindled. The men were exhausted, thirsty, and bleeding. Then came the breaking point. A Persian detachment ambushed a Greek supply line, cutting off the last water source near the Asopus River. Without it, the Greeks would last only a few more days. Desperate, Pausanias ordered a night withdrawal toward higher ground, but in the confusion, units became separated. Some moved too far, others stayed behind. When dawn came, the Persian general Mardonius saw what looked like a retreat. He didn't hesitate. He ordered his full army to attack. The trap was sprung, but not the way Mardonius thought. You see, the Greeks hadn't fled in panic. They had repositioned. The Spartan line, though battered, still held formation, and Pausanias, watching the Persians pour across the plain, saw his chance. He whispered a silent prayer to Leonidas. "Guide my hand, uncle. Let me finish your war." As the Persians advanced, the ground shook beneath their charge. The Greeks braced their shields and tightened ranks. The moment had come, and on that ridge overlooking the Asopus, the 10,000 Spartans waited not as soldiers of a city, but as the living embodiment of vengeance. Before we dive deeper into the brutal chess match of this battle, I find it incredible that we're exploring these ancient stories together from all over the world. If you're listening right now, take a second to comment below and tell me where you're watching from, because this story, this war, connects us all through time.
The sun rose blood red over the plains of Platea, as if the gods themselves were warning both sides of what was to come. The air was heavy with tension, a silence before the storm. Across the field, the Persians reformed their massive army. Mardonius, the Persian commander and cousin of Xerxes, rode a white stallion draped in silk and gold. He believed he was about to crush the last resistance of Greece. He believed that the Spartans were trapped, exhausted, and divided. He was wrong. What he didn't see was the quiet precision unfolding among the Greek ranks, a kind of organized chaos that only years of Spartan training could create. Pausanias knew the Persians had numbers, cavalry, and the high ground, but he also knew something Mardonius didn't. The discipline of a Spartan line could turn chaos into control. Every man knew his position, every shield fit perfectly beside another. Together, they formed a single impenetrable wall of bronze. The Greeks began preparing their position, adjusting shields, realigning ranks, sharpening weapons in silence. A Spartan phalanx wasn't just a formation, it was a living machine. When it moved as one. When it struck with the force of a god's hammer. Pausanias walked the line, inspecting every soldier. He stopped before an old warrior, scars covering his arms, his helmet dented and worn from decades of battle. The man met his gaze, saying nothing. He simply tightened his grip on his spear. Pausanias nodded and moved on. No words were needed. Every Spartan there understood. This wasn't a fight for survival. It was a fight for legacy. Mardonius ordered his archers forward. The Persian sky darkened as thousands of arrows soared into the air. The Greeks raised their shields, the metallic rain clattering against bronze and wood. None broke formation. When the arrows stopped, the Spartans lowered their shields and advanced, slowly, deliberately. Step, shield, spear. Step, shield, spear. Every move measured, every breath controlled. Mardonius, growing impatient, unleashed his cavalry, horsemen armed with long spears and curved swords, their armor gleaming under the sun. They charged, screaming war cries. The ground trembled beneath them. But Pausanias had been waiting for this. He ordered his men to tighten ranks and angle their spears forward. The result was devastating. The horses impaled themselves on a wall of bronze and iron, throwing riders from their saddles. In seconds, the plain became a writhing mass of broken animals and dying men. Still, the Persians pressed on. More waves came, hurling javelins and fire-tipped arrows. The Greeks held fast, their shields locking tighter, their discipline unshakable. Pausanias raised his eyes toward the heavens, silently calling on the gods of war for a sign. And then it came. A lone eagle circled above the Spartan ranks. To them, it was a message from Zeus himself, the omen they had been waiting for. Pausanias turned to his men and shouted, "Hold! The gods fight with us today!" With renewed fury, the Spartans surged forward. Their advance was slow, grinding, but unstoppable. Every step was earned in blood. Every thrust of the spear pushed the Persians back a little further. As the day wore on, both sides bled, but the balance began to shift. The Persians, so used to breaking enemies with overwhelming force, were now being dragged into a kind of warfare they couldn't understand, the tight, disciplined brutality of the phalanx, and it was working. The Greeks, though fewer in number, began driving the Persians back toward their fortified camp. Dust filled the air, the roar of battle grew deafening. The field became a blur of red cloaks and dark armor, sunlight flashing off countless blades. Mardonius watched from a distance, his confidence faltering. He could see the Greek line tightening, adapting, like a serpent coiling for a strike. He had underestimated them, again. Pausanias, his armor spattered with blood, stood firm in the center of the line. He knew this was the moment to strike, but he also knew patience was the key. The Persians still had reserves. If the Greeks overextended, they would be surrounded and destroyed. So he waited. Hour after hour, the battle swayed like a pendulum. Each side refused to break. But deep within the Persian camp, panic was beginning to spread. Rumors whispered through the ranks that the gods had abandoned them, that the Greeks could not be killed. And by sunset, even the bravest among them began to feel it, the creeping weight of fear. The trap was closing. Before we move into the decisive clash that will determine the fate of an empire, if you can feel the tension building in this story, tap the like button right now. It helps the algorithm find more history fans like us. And trust me, you'll want them with you when we step into the next act, because what happens next is chaos, blood, and destiny colliding.
The noon sun blazed over Platea, turning the battlefield into a furnace. The clang of steel and the screams of dying men carried for miles. The air was thick with dust and blood, and the ground beneath the soldiers' feet had turned to mud, slick with sweat and crimson. By now, both armies were exhausted, but only one side still believed in the fight. The Persians had thrown everything they had, archers, cavalry, and infantry in endless waves, yet the Greek line still held. The phalanx was no longer just a formation, it was a wall of fury. The Spartans fought shoulder to shoulder, their red cloaks darkened with blood, their armor dented and scarred. Every strike of their spears was driven by memory, the image of the 300 at Thermopylae, standing against impossible odds. And yet, even as the Greeks held firm, danger was closing in. The Persians had managed to stretch the Greek line thin. In the chaos, several allied contingents were pushed back, opening a gap. Mardonius saw his chance. He barked an order, and a fresh regiment of Immortals, the elite guard who had once crushed Leonidas' men, charged straight for the breach. The sound that followed was a nightmare. The Immortals advanced with terrifying precision, their silver armor glinting in the sunlight, their battle cries rising like thunder. Greek soldiers fell back under the weight of the assault. Pausanias saw it happening, saw the line beginning to buckle, and knew that if it broke, all was lost. He lifted his spear to the sky and shouted, "Spartans, with me!" And with that, he and his 10,000 surged forward. The ground trembled under their charge, shields locked, spears leveled. It was a living wave of bronze and rage. The Immortals crashed into them, and the world erupted. The clash was deafening. Spears shattered like lightning, swords flashed in blinding arcs, and shields splintered beneath the impact. Men screamed, metal shrieked, and blood sprayed through the air in dark fountains. The Persians fought with courage, but they couldn't match the sheer ferocity of the Spartans.
Every move of the phalanx was deliberate and merciless, a rhythmic symphony of death. Each time a Spartan thrust forward, an immortal fell. Each time a Persian tried to break through, a shield slammed into him like a hammer. The air grew so thick with dust that men could barely see each other. It was fighting by instinct, by sound, and by the heat of bodies pressing against bodies. Inside that chaos, Pausanias fought like a man possessed. His spear was broken, so he drew his sword, cutting his way toward Mardonius's position. Around him, Spartans roared their battle cry, "For Leonidas!" as if the dead king himself were among them. Mardonius watched the chaos from atop his white horse, fury burning in his eyes. He rode forward, desperate to rally his troops. He was a nobleman, not a coward, and he charged straight into the heart of the Spartan line. He never came out. As he galloped through the smoke, a Spartan warrior hurled a stone that struck Mardonius in the head, knocking him from his horse. He hit the ground hard, dazed and bleeding. Before he could rise, a Spartan spear drove through his chest, pinning him to the earth. When word spread that Mardonius had fallen, the Persian army broke. Panic swept through their ranks like wildfire. Soldiers threw down their weapons, tripping over the bodies of their comrades in a frantic scramble to reach their camp. The mighty host of Persia, the same army that had burned Athens and crushed cities, was now running for its life. The Greeks, sensing victory, pressed the attack. They chased the Persians across the plain, cutting them down without mercy. The ground shook with their pursuit, the air filled with the sound of shields striking flesh. By the time the sun began to sink, the Persians were cornered inside their fortified camp. The Greeks surrounded it. The Spartans, their armor soaked in blood, stood at the gates. Pausanias raised his sword and gave the order. The Greeks stormed the camp. What followed was nothing short of slaughter. The Persians, trapped and leaderless, fought desperately, but the Greeks tore through them like a tempest. Tents burned, the sky filled with smoke, and screams echoed for miles. The vengeance of the 300 had finally been unleashed, and it was merciless. When it was over, the battlefield was silent. Tens of thousands of Persian corpses littered the plain. The once golden banners of Xerxes' empire lay trampled in the mud. The Greeks had done the impossible. They hadn't just defeated the Persian army, they had annihilated it. Before we enter the final moments of vengeance and the haunting aftermath that would echo across centuries, make sure you're watching till the very end, because what happens after the fighting stops is something history almost forgot.
When the sun finally sank behind the mountains of Platea, the battlefield lay silent, but the silence was not peace. It was the silence of exhaustion, of ghosts, of vengeance finally spent. The smoke from burning tents curled into the evening sky like dark prayers. Among the ruins of the Persian camp, the Spartans moved methodically, their armor blackened with blood and soot. No cheers rose from their ranks, no songs of triumph echoed across the plain. Their faces were hard, expressionless, as if victory itself carried no joy, only grim satisfaction. The ground was littered with broken spears, shattered shields, and the bodies of the fallen. Thousands of Persians lay where they had been cut down, their once proud banners reduced to ashes. The mighty army of Xerxes, the same empire that had once cast a shadow across half the known world, had been destroyed. Pausanias stood at the center of it all, his sword hanging at his side, the weight of what had happened pressing down on him. He looked to the north, where Thermopylae lay beyond the mountains. His uncle Leonidas had died there, defiant, unbending, unforgotten. Now the debt was paid, but Sparta was not finished. As the Greeks gathered to count their dead, the Spartans turned their attention to the spoils of war. Gold, armor, silks, and weapons, enough treasure to fill temples, lay scattered across the Persian camp. Yet Pausanias ordered none of it touched. Instead, he gave a single command: "Bring me the remains of Mardonius." The Persian general's body was dragged from the wreckage, stripped of its finery, and laid before him. The soldiers expected Pausanias to mutilate it, to take the revenge Leonidas never could, but instead, Pausanias looked down and said nothing. After a long silence, he ordered that the body be buried. To the Spartans, this was not mercy, it was dominance. To deny an enemy humiliation, to show restraint when one could destroy, was the ultimate expression of power. Only after that did Pausanias allow the army to honor the dead. The next morning, under a pale dawn, the Spartans began a ritual that would echo through legend. They built a massive funeral pyre, not for their own fallen, but for all the Greeks who had died in the defense of freedom. As the flames roared, the men stood in silence, their shadows flickering against the light. When the fire burned low, Pausanias stepped forward and placed a bronze shield into the embers. On it, engraved in Spartan script, were the words, "Here we stand, where Leonidas fell." It was a statement to the world and a warning. For the Persians who survived and fled, their journey home was a nightmare. Stories say that Xerxes himself, hearing of Mardonius's death, tore his robes and cursed the gods. His once invincible empire had been humbled by a nation smaller than one of his provinces. In the days that followed, the Greeks tore down the Persian fortifications, dismantled their walls, and reclaimed the land. The bodies of the invaders were left unburied, a grim reminder to any who might think to return. And yet, among the Spartans, there was no boasting. They did not speak of glory, only of duty. The war had been fought not for conquest, but for vengeance, and vengeance once claimed leaves only silence behind. Pausanias walked the battlefield one last time before the army departed. He stopped at a broken spear lying in the dirt, one that bore the mark of the 300. He knelt, picked it up, and whispered, "Your brothers are avenged." He left it there, standing upright in the soil, a solitary monument to those who had fallen at Thermopylae. The Greeks marched home that evening beneath a blood-red sky, and for the first time in living memory, the shadow of Persia no longer loomed over Greece. Before we uncover how this victory reshaped history and the haunting legacy it left behind, if this story moved you, let me know in the comments below. What moment hit you the hardest, Leonidas's stand or Pausanias's vengeance? I read every single one, and your insights keep this storytelling community alive.
When the smoke of Platea finally cleared, the world itself seemed to shift. The earth that had drunk the blood of tens of thousands now lay still, but its silence carried the weight of destiny. The Persian Empire, once thought invincible, had been shattered not by numbers, not by gold, but by resolve. Word of the victory spread like fire across Greece. Messengers rode from city to city, their voices hoarse from shouting a single word: freedom. In Sparta, the widows of the 300 stood on the temple steps as the surviving warriors marched home. No tears were shed, only nods, solemn, proud, unbroken. The vengeance of the Spartans had not only avenged Thermopylae, it had redefined it. The world now understood what it meant to stand against tyranny. Platea was more than a battlefield, it was a declaration. For the Persians, it marked the beginning of the end. The dream of conquering Greece died that day among the smoldering ruins of their camp.
Xerxes, once the master of empires, withdrew into silence. His armies would never again march west in such numbers. But for Greece and for Sparta, Platea was a turning point. The city-states, once fractured and suspicious, had fought as one. Athens, Sparta, Corinth, Megara, all had stood together beneath the same sky, against the same enemy. For a fleeting moment, they were not rivals, they were brothers. And though that unity would later fade, the legend it created would endure for millennia. In the years that followed, Greek philosophers, poets, and storytellers looked back on Platea not merely as a victory, but as proof that courage, discipline, and sacrifice could overcome even the greatest of odds. The names of the fallen Spartans were carved into stone, not as martyrs, but as examples. The world they defended went on to shape the modern age: democracy, philosophy, art, reason, all born in the shadow of those who stood their ground when surrender seemed inevitable. And yet, even in triumph, Sparta remained unchanged. Their glory was quiet, their pride measured. They did not build grand monuments or hold lavish celebrations. Instead, they sent messengers to Delphi to thank the gods, and then returned to their training, as if preparing for the next war they already knew would come. Because to the Spartans, victory was never an ending, it was a duty fulfilled. Still, the memory of Platea lived on. Travelers who crossed the plains generations later claimed that on windless nights you could still hear the echo of shields striking shields, a phantom chorus of the 10,000 marching toward destiny. Some said they saw faint lights, like embers, flickering across the fields where the fires once burned. Maybe it was just imagination, or maybe, as the Greeks believed, the spirits of the warriors still kept watch over the land they'd saved. Centuries later, historians would look back and call it one of the most decisive battles in human history, not just because it ended the Persian invasion, but because it preserved an idea that freedom, once earned in blood, is worth any price to defend. And it all began with the stand of 300 men who refused to bow. Leonidas's last words at Thermopylae, "Come and take them," echoed through Platea, through the centuries, and into every heart that has ever faced impossible odds. Because that's what the Spartans truly left behind. Not just victory, but the example of defiance in the face of overwhelming power. Pausanias would never again fight a battle as great as Platea. History would remember him not as a conqueror, but as an avenger, the man who finished what his uncle began. And in the end, that was enough. As for the Persians, their empire endured for centuries more, vast and magnificent, but never again would they look toward Greece with conquest in their hearts. They had learned what the world would come to know for ages afterwards. Empires fall, but courage endures. The plains of Platea are quiet now, green fields and olive groves where armies once clashed. But beneath that calm surface lies the memory of fire, steel, and sacrifice. And if you listen closely, you can still hear it. The sound of 10,000 shields locking in unison, the battle cry carried by the wind, for Leonidas, forever echoing, forever unbroken. Before you go, if this story stirred something in you, share it. History isn't just about remembering the past, it's about feeling it. Drop a comment below about what this story meant to you, and if you want more epic tales like this, make sure you subscribe, because there are countless forgotten battles, buried legends, and acts of defiance waiting to be told.